Everybody, my name is Bennett. I'm a student in the Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning class here at Utah State. In our class, we have this wonderful opportunity to kind of do oral presentations. Earlier in the year, I was able to work on a project for one of my other classes, but did not have the opportunity to really present it or talk about it a lot, so I figured this would be a great opportunity. Earlier in this year, I was able to work on a project at Canyon Entrance Park. Many of you actually know it as First Dam Park. Everybody knows it because of its great location. At one side you have Cache National Forest and Logan Canyon, on the other it's Logan City. Has a very key location in just the fact that you get the best of both worlds. You have the city to your back and adventures in front of you. Everybody knows the park, especially also because of the fact you get to feed the ducks. Everybody goes and feeds the ducks. It's also a great area to just picnic, to walk, to just enjoy. It's one of the most heavily used parks in Logan. And for that reason, earlier in the year, Logan City approached us and they wanted to know why it's the most heavily used park. They wanted to know what was working about it, what wasn't working about it, and they even had a few ideas to kind of throw in to possibly make it better for the future. Some of those ideas included enhanced parking, enhanced ADA access, a better sand beach, and probably the biggest one was the fact of the implementation of a watercraft launch and a concession stand. Just with that broad range of topics of having to kind of develop a whole thing about a park and look into the future implementations, I broke it down into kind of three more simpler ideas that would be better to kind of understand. Those three ideas are cultural things, physical things, and biological things. We're going to start off with the cultural things, or the cultural inventory. Simply looking at things from zoning and planning maps, from property ownership, from the infrastructure, and especially the demographics. A lot of the demographics that are seen in the area is students, and the younger families that live in the island are by far and away the most popular users for the park. Just because of its location with the benches to the north and south, a lot of the people at Lundstrom area and also Cliffside area don't use the park. Not only because of the natural barrier, but they also have kind of their own separate larger parks that they mainly attend and use. A lot of the other big things that we saw, because we are students, we love to get out and about, especially in finals week. It is a large carpool hub. Everybody loves to go up to the canyon to hike, to do fires, whatever you like to do. So the parking there is very restricted, just because so many people do show up and then they leave as a group to go up the canyon. One of the last things to do with transportation was the fact that there's no public transportation there. The closest CVTD stop is actually up at the top of the hill, close to the campus and also close to the forestry place. Moving forward, looking at some of the physical inventory, by far and away, it's probably one of the most important, not only because it includes important things for the building of a concession stand or watercraft launch, but the fact that that's why people come. People go there because you get the wilderness and the city right there in one location. The aesthetic views are top-notch. Some of the issues, though, with it is because of its location. It used to be part of Lake Bonneville, and the Logan River has always dumped its sediment at that location. So the soils found at that site are very clay, and clay and water are not the best of friends. So you don't get a lot of water that permeates through the soil, and also with the dam being built, it raised the water table in that area. So building buildings or small structures, it's really difficult, not only because you have the water table very close to the surface, but you also have the bedrock close to the surface as well. Definitely changing things in the way of costs for development. The third one we're going to look at is the biological inventory. First and foremost, you have to talk about the ducks. To be honest, feeding the ducks is probably one of the best things about the park, but it's always the worst. All the wildlife, whether it be fish, ducks, geese, whatever it is, they're all classical condition. If you don't believe me, next time you're out there at the park, go and feed the ducks. You'll notice that the ducks come to you before you even get to them. They're just there expecting food. That's not how things function in nature at all. It is a nice commodity, but at the same time, we need to pay attention to what we're actually doing to the wildlife and flora around us. Some of the other things there, because of that high clay soil, there's also a lot of alkaline base in it. For a lot of plants that are not native to Utah, that makes it extremely difficult to grow in that area. So native plants definitely need to be used and can be used to kind of help make the site a lot more aesthetically pleasing. So now that we have a general idea of kind of what's at the park, I wanted to look more into the relationships that you can find with the amenities at the park. We're going to be looking at things such as picnic, fishing, swimming, just general wildlife, and then we also would like to include concessions, the sand beach. Simply, I created a matrix that pits these amenities against each other so that you get a clear picture of what relationships are actually there, what the sand beach relates to, what the sand beach doesn't work with at all. And a lot of the big conclusions that we found from looking at those things was, first and foremost, picnic tables. There at the park, there's the pavilion and the picnic tables, but if you're there over the summertime and you're looking for a spot to eat, there's basically nothing around. There definitely needs to be a lot more picnic tables there. Another big thing that we noticed and that Logan City wants to emphasize is ADA access. For the most part, the park does a decent job at helping those with disabilities and that have issues with access. Although for the sand beach and some of the piers, you have overgrown pathways and ramps. You have very difficult maneuverability things. So looking forward in the future, we need to make sure that those things are upkept and definitely able to use. The biggest no-no that we found was in fact the concession stand. Not only for wildlife reasons, but also just for the fact that in the lower section, you can't really build it because of the high water table. You can definitely build it up on the higher slopes, but if you're going to do that, your cost for development skyrockets. Some of the other things that I was able to find was the fact that the dam needs to be dredged. Because of the steep slopes, there's a lot of sediment buildup that happens in the dam. With that sediment comes moss and things that grow in that sediment. That moss, nobody wants to swim in it. Fishermen don't like it because they lose their lines and lures, and it's difficult to get in the water. And it's technically not the best thing for the fish either. So if you dredge it, you're definitely helping out a lot of activities. You can also implement a couple more piers, not only for access for fishermen, but for people that just like to enjoy the views that are there at the park. To give somewhat of an idea of where these things could be located, I created just a quick concept plan that can just show at least locations and areas where things can be incorporated. In the purple area up here at the top, definitely the nature trails can be used there, just to give you a different perspective and sight on the park itself. All these green areas that are located throughout are areas that definitely native vegetation needs to be introduced. They're barren areas and erosion just kind of takes out the hillside inch by inch. So definitely need an increase in vegetation. This orange area on the lower part of the park would definitely be an area that we could take advantage of and create a small screen in between the highway and the park and be able to build picnic tables there. Definitely to add for that summertime busyness. These brown and dark blue areas right there are great areas where the fishing piers and the watercraft launch can be taken care of, because this upper part of the dam is where most of the fishermen do like to fish, so definitely take advantage of that. So short, sweet, and to the point. I hope you were able to kind of learn something and gain kind of a greater knowledge of the landscape architecture world in a small facet of what we do, and also just for the park itself, so maybe next time you're down there, you'll learn something new. So thank you, and please post any comments or questions below.